Hey everybody, long days and pleasant nights. Welcome to episode 2 of A Walk Along the Beams. We're going to be talking about the drawing of the three. Introduce everybody. We got. We'll go over it. We got Trev, we got Steve, we got Namman. Go ahead and say hi, everybody.
What's up?
Hey, everybody.
Should be fun.
Hello, hello.
Good evening.
There we go.
Golly.
All right, I'm gonna say hi to the chat real quick, and then we're gonna get started. We got Kenneth B up in here first. What's up, Kenneth B? We got Trev on the chat, of course. We got Las Cruces. What's up, Las Cruces? Got Phil with the ultimate line. You know, the man in black. Other Phil.
Another Phil.
We got Tina. Howdy, Tina.
Oh, gee.
Got Steve in the chat. What's up, Steve?
I'm here.
Oh, no.
Forget about him.
Got Travis. What's up, Travis?
TM.
This is where Stephen King focused. And we got Ambient Storm. What's up, Ambient Storm?
Ambient?
All right, so this book was copyrighted originally in 1987. So from The Gunslinger, the last book that we talked about, I mean, we're going from originally copyright 78. So in between, the books that he did was The Stand in 78, Dead Zone 79, Long Walk 79, Firestarter 80, Roadwork 81, Cujo 1981, the real release of The Gunslinger in novel form 82, Running Man 82, Different Seasons 82, Christina 83, Pet Cemetery 83, Cycle of the Werewolf 83, Thinner 84, The Talisman 84, It 86, Eyes of the Dragon 87, and finally Drawing of the Three. So this dude was busy in between, you know, The Gunslinger and, I mean, because there was a massive gap. We're talking about from 82, right. If you would have caught the novel, to 87, it's still like, you know, a good 6-year gap in between.
A lot of experience
between
the first and second book. And I think this is really where the Dark Tower starts. Like, this is where I think it starts. Like, I could take, like, if I was going to make a movie, this is where I would start the movie. Because I probably would not put the first book in. I would probably put that in toward as an ending, and this is where I would start the book.
Well, it does. I mean, that's a great thought, because at the end of that first book, it did say this, the end of the beginning of the, you know, as where we start off with the second book, you know, and it does start off proper, like right where the first book left off. We were, you know, right with Roland, you know, from the get-go. I can actually see that.
The first line has to be there, though. First line, the very first line.
First line is a good hook, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So besides all the other, like, the books that Stephen King has done, I mean, he's still going through the same stuff that he was during the first Gunslinger. He's still battling addiction. I wouldn't even say battling at this time. He just had addictions, you know, at this time. That was kind of like well known and documented, but it does play like a major theme in this story, right?
Big time.
So let's start out. We have a couple things that we can start the book with, and it might be a little different for the audio version, but of course we have the introduction, because I have the revised one, but it's the same from the first one. But then right after that, we have an argument. I don't know if the audio version starts out with the argument, and it's just basically like Stephen King kind of putting in a little more narrative. Did it have?
He kind of fills in everything that just happened.
It's kind of like a touch base with, you know,
I don't think that's in there.
Okay, so like right after that, we start the book proper, and it's actually titled Prologue. And that's where we start this book off with Roland on the beach, and I'll read a little. It's Roland wakes up on a beach after having a dream. He is the sailor. After waking, he gets attacked by the Lostrosities, losing 2 fingers on his right hand and a big toe on his right foot, and his calf is majorly slashed on the right side. And that's kind of what the whole gist of the prologue is.
And it's
My
one of the first pictures in the book you get to see. I don't know if it'll show, but you get to see one of the Lostrosities.
hold on a minute.
Steve has a comic book version of that.
It's a dark painting, but it's there. You go. One of the
I thought they'd
Lostrosities.
be bigger than that, actually.
Yeah,
No.
me too.
They are supposed to be 4 foot long, and like they never give us a height, but it's referred as like a medium dog. Let me make you big, Steve. Huh?
I think everyone kind of has their own interpretation of it. Every artist will take his own interpretation of it. Have you ever seen those? One thing this really reminded me of is they've been talking about the Amelia Earhart airplane crash that
Yeah.
they think they just found, and you know what they originally thought is how she died on that island, that her airplane crashed on the island in the ocean, and there was these big huge crabs. They were like these huge stone crabs that could climb up trees. They said that if they were sleeping on the beach, that them crabs would come down and tear them up. But if you look at a picture of those crabs from that island that they were talking about, like, I think those are like the scariest crabs. Like they're creepy. They're real bulky, and they got like real big front claws, but they're not really claws though. They just walk with them. And
I've seen some scary crabs.
but yeah,
The-
they're like land crabs.
These things, they're just. I mean, I remember reading it the first time, and they scared the crap out of me. Like the way they were. It wasn't even the way they were described, or like their little weird like talk that they do.
That
Right? No,
and they're poisonous.
it was the damage that they did. Like how easily they ripped through like Roland's like old ass stuff. Like to me, that was one of the scarier things. And we do see like how easily they do just rip up a regular dude later. You know.
Yeah. What kind of struck me when they first started describing the lobstrosities, it didn't really sound like anything imposing. Even like the narrator in the audio version did the sound effect, and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds like nothing.
And
then
they kind of say they kind of sound human, almost kind of have a human sound.
Yeah, and they start tearing them apart, and it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this isn't something you want to mess around with.
It's kind of like the way it's described in the book is the creature comes up and he's like investigating, and he does that whole did a chick, did a chum, and he's just talking randomly, but it's like the second he gets close enough, and Roland's kind of just coming out of it. He's not all the way there, and like I mean because he's coming out of a dream, but like
He's
like
kind of delirious, yeah.
yeah,
I visualize bipedal kind of lobster standing up kind of thing.
Yeah, like his hands up.
Mm-hmm. That part always kind of like weirded me out how they like went into boxing stands when they were doing the water or whatever, and they had to stop and like do all that. I thought.
Have you ever seen like a spider or like a tarantula raise its legs at you? Kind of like that.
So well, I do have our first question that goes into this, and it's going to be about the dream, right? During Roland's dream, he has a dream in which he becomes the human embodiment of Walter's tarot card, the sailor, which was Jake from the first book. Why does he consider this a good dream?
What was the question? Why does he consider?
During the dream, he kind of puts his self in Jake's place. He envisions that he's the person that's falling, except he's not falling, he's drowning, like the tarot card said, the sailor. But Roland sees it as a good thing during the dream. When he wakes up, it's actually like he's having like things you would associate with a good dream. He is hazed, lazed, and dazed, but at the same time, like he yeah, I forget the direct wording, but it's seen as a good thing. Why does he see it as a good thing? You know, in that dream with Jake, he himself as Jake drowning. Any thoughts?
Who's going first?
Trev?
I don't have any thoughts with that.
Steve?
It's almost going to be a bit of a spoiler, though, but it's finally a break of the chain that he's been on. Because, I mean, they've all the spoilers, but I can't really say too much about it because it's a massive spoiler. But it's a break in the rhetoric that he's been going through. Round and round and round. The wheel of Ka.
That's exactly what it is. And I like the way you worded it. I like the way you worded it. That was good. But that's exactly what it is.
So he's seeing it as something he hasn't seen before?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like something that he didn't perceive the first time, kind of thing, or that he wouldn't, or he wouldn't have thought of. Yeah. Okay, so
it's a new path.
Namman, do you have any?
Well, yeah, I thought that too. Also, another thing I thought was that he see himself being punished, like he deserves it. So
That's the way I originally took it myself.
That's how I was looking at it. Yeah.
Yep.
He was a sailor.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I was, I didn't really even consider the tarot or anything like that. But Steve, the way that you just described it, I thought was interesting. Where you're saying it's breaking the chain, and Oren, I'm sorry, you just said too, it's like breaking what he was kind of stuck into, the normal, because the whole tone of this book felt drastically different than the first book. I mean, even Roland, to be honest with you, when I think about him in the first book, he was very determined, almost too determined, as we said, focused, but he was very kind of aware of the dangers of where he was, whereas this kind of this book, he's thrown right into the situation where you get the idea he has no idea where he is, he has no idea what's going on, and these lobsters are starting to attack him, that kind of stuff. So that kind of is interesting, that statement, breaking from the chain, just kind of fits it very well.
Well, I'm love that you touch based on that, Phil, because that actually goes into my second question for everybody. How did Stephen King's writing style change in your perspective, and did it work for you? Trev, we'll go around the same block.
It went from a lot of external description, like getting you involved with what's going on around him, to getting you involved with his internal dialogue with Eddie. So it was that perspective was completely different. I feel like he wanted you to feel a lot more about what was going on than in the first book. The first book was more of a gradual adventure, and this one was more like trying to keep you in the moment.
Like maybe what was going on mattered a little more than, like the last book kind of, to me, felt like a memory or like a flashback almost coming back, instead of like him moving forward on the path. It felt more like he was just explaining who he was, where he came from, where he is. And that's what you're getting. And then this book, it was like, now we're on the path, now we're moving forward, everything's new, everything's different, I'm out of place now.
Right. The first book, he had a clear path, a clear goal. In this book, he's kind of lost.
Yeah, all over the place kind of thing.
It's the fish out of water.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
Well, the first book was to grab you, get you in, get the attention. The second book, we're now character building, so now we're going to get his quartet back together again. He needs his people so he can move forward. And this is something that's beyond the Crimson King and beyond Walter now.
I mean, it kind of reflects the whole like King Arthur thing that was set up kind of at the end of the first book. I mean, and King Arthur wasn't by himself, kind of thing. So that's kind of like how I took it. Namman?
I saw it as it's really like, who said it? This book is like introducing this particular universe, right?
Yep.
It was teaching you the language first, like a pumpkin instead of sandwich, you know. And so it was teaching.
Can it?
It was introducing introducing the culture and the slight differences between our culture, between the Dark Tower universe and ours, because the drawing of the three happens to be from our universe. So,
Norman?
Yeah, I'm trying to put myself in like my memory of the first time I read it, and like I can remember like I realized like not so much what was different between the first and second book, but like I was kind of just realizing how Stephen King writes, and I realized he's put an atmosphere in everything. Like I can feel where I am, and like everything's dark, everything's gloomy, and got this feel. Everything has a feel to it, and he's describing the environment. He describes everything to where what it feels like, what it smells like, what it looks like, everything, what the weather's like. And I guess the other thing I noticed was like the characters. I was getting very confused because there were so many names. Like he'll name every character. This is where sometimes I think his over describing kind of has a downfall, because like he'll say out so many names and you don't know, well, who's important, which name do I need to remember? Is Jane the flight attendant the name I'm going to need to remember, or is she going to be important later? Or you never, but that's also kind of cool about his writing. You don't know who you might need to remember, who is going to be important. So I guess that's why he does that. But sometimes I wish he just says, the flight attendant or the two bodyguards instead of Jack, or giving everybody a name.
Yeah.
But,
Turn them into NPCs,
sometimes
non-player
it's
characters.
many names to keep up with. But yeah, I really fell in love with his writing on this second book. I really did.
I mean, it's really helpful that Roland is a very observant dude, right?
Right.
If Roland wasn't observant, all those characteristics, it's hard to put those characteristics in there without him directly observing them, right? And the flight attendant becomes important part because Roland is the one who is observing them and noticing the twitch of eyes and whether
it's letting you know he's not so stupid. Like he is pretty, he's adept.
Yeah,
he's pretty trig.
Philtastic, it's on you.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I noticed, like I said, this was definitely tonally different than the first book. The first book felt like I was reading almost kind of a post-apocalyptic Western kind of sci-fi fantasy piece. This felt more like, like a modern day kind of a crime drama. Mm-hmm. At times, it was almost felt kind of like a buddy type of situation. But like I said, it was interesting that you saw Roland in the last book as a person who was so sure of himself, and this is this world, and this is this, and now he's in this totally different situation where he's disfigured, has no idea what's going on. He has his own names for things like sandwiches and whatnot. One thing I did find a little bit strange, I know that in the prior book he kept saying the paper is this sign of opulence and wealth, and in here he was kind of shocked that, in the modern day I should say, he was kind of shocked that it was just everywhere that you go.
Yeah.
And I made a note of this just because I couldn't quite understand why, but it said something like, I wrote something down that even though he knows it's a sign of wealth, he doesn't like the paper in the modern world. I don't know where that kind of plays into things.
I don't think he said he didn't like the paper. I think he didn't like how people are wasting the paper.
Yeah, he was uncomfortable with like how wealthy they appeared by his status, and also how like frugalist what they were stuff, because he was noticing that people were like not using the entirety of paper. They were like just, scribbling on it and throwing it away, and to him that was like disgusting. And because of the world he lives in, paper is scarce where he comes from.
One thing I do have to say, Namman, did you listen to the audio version of this as well?
Yeah, I'll listen to audio version. Yeah.
It was a different narrator on this one. I think the one I listened to came out a little bit later, for the first chapter, for the first book, I should say. This one, the narrator, and I think somebody in our chat said it was the old narrator who had passed away, was so distracting because he was trying to give everybody a different voice. At one point, it sounded like he was doing a George Carlin impression. It like to the point where I'm not going to get ahead into the next area, but at times it was like I have to rewind because I kind of was just thrown off.
Simon and Schuster Audio presents The Drawing of the Three, The Dark Tower, Book 2 by Stephen King. Read by Frank Muller.
Hey, Joe.
There it is.
Hey, Travis. Hey, Chris.
Yeah. One other thing I did notice, by the way,
Drawing of the Three
where
is the second volume of a long.
There you go, dude. Did you hear that voice?
No, it came in more when he started to do, when he actually started to do more of Eddie and Eddie's brother. Like again, I kept thinking it was a Carlin bit.
The last gunslinger of a world which has moved on.
Yeah, this is the version I know.
Yeah.
That's Frank Mueller. That's the version I know.
Yeah, that's the
So
one.
you didn't have the same version, Phil?
Yeah, I don't know
Not
if
for
I'll
the
get
first
kicked
book.
off if I go to Audible now. But let me see. If I get
For the
kicked off,
book-
I'll jump back in.
For the first book, we're thinking he had the revised audio version, because there is 2 audio versions of The Gunslinger, since there is a revised version and Frank Mueller passed away. So the way it looks online is like Frank Mueller, like once he passed away, they gave the new narrator the job. He started at books like 5, 6, 7, and 8 and went back and did the first book in his voice. So most of us that heard the audiobook, I want to say before 2003, probably heard the Frank Mueller version all the way through like books 1, 2, 3, 4. And like for y'all, since y'all picked the revised version, it probably like automatically led y'all, with that new narrator's voice. So that's probably why it was different.
Well, this one, I just checked. It did say Frank Mueller for this one. But I know the prior one I listened to, I should say, was the newer narrator, because it had the movie poster as the cover of the book.
Yeah, the revised. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Frank Mueller did get into the voices, so like you
Yes,
said.
he did.
I like Frank Mueller.
I do too.
He's my favorite.
I do too.
Like I said, when
So
I
did
got to
Stephen King. Stephen King used them for all of his audiobooks.
Yeah.
I love Frank Mueller. I was so sad when he passed.
just when it got to Eddie, though, like again, he just did this inflection, like he's doing an impression of a Jersey guy. That's how it kind of sounded, to the point where I found it distracting.
I could see how that's why, like, people were asking if I was going to audio read this book. And first off, like, it's the second half of the book that we haven't got to. That's the harder part to do. Like Namman was kind of, and it is very tricky, but like, not only that, but the voices that are in there. I mean, we're talking about stereotypical Italian mafia guys.
I actually like his Italian mobster talk, and
I do.
Edda Walker and Odetta. Oops.
Well, evil people are going to get offended. They're going to get offended. It's literature. You have to read it the way it's intended to be read, even if there's words that you're uncomfortable reading. It's in the book.
Yeah, facts. My perspective, like, I can remember reading this book, like going into, from the Gunslinger, because I absolutely love the Gunslinger, but in going into this book, the magic didn't stop for me. To me, all this, the first time I read it, was just magical. But then, like, I could say on this read, and it might be because I just know the story at this point, it was a different read. You're talking about from his style, the way he was in the first book, it was just a solid, like, you're on a journey, it's a straight path. This one, it starts off and you're just automatically, Roland's being punished. There's confusion on what he needs to do, because he doesn't really know. So it is like a different feel. I mean, they both feel completely different books. But I'll say this: if you've read Stephen King, this book is more like Stephen King and all his other books, because he does this a lot. He likes to highlight NPCs, and you never know whether they're going to be somebody important, and he does it really well, like the cab driver, like that, the stewardess on the plane. You never know who's going to be an important character or a character that comes back later on, because this is a series. And I love that. I love his character building and stuff like that. I've heard that he's like he kind of overdoes it, and I can see that too, especially when you're reading, you know where you kind of have an idea where the plot is, and he deviates like big time. Like, come on, get with it. But there is a dramatic change, and it's hard to sell people on, especially coming from the Gunslinger to this one. I know Trev was like, and I will say that it's going back to what Aaron said originally, that this is kind of the true beginning to our story, kind of thing, and so in every beginning of the story there is a lot of character building and a lot of universe building and stuff like that. But I can also say that the difference is, like, for me, you're on this magical journey in the first one in a faraway land, and then this one takes us right back to like home, right? Predominantly, this book's we're in New York. Like, I mean, it might not be your home, but I mean, it's still America, Earth, that kind of thing.
As far as we know.
All right, so
I would love to see Bruno take on one of those Frank Miller's Italian mobster talk, Joe.
Right. I would love to do like a collaborative, because there are certain voices I just can't do. Like, I might be able to do certain female voices, like, but there's certain one. My voice is just too low for those things. All right, but so anyway, let's move on. So moving on, we go to the next chapter, and it's The Prisoner in the Door. A brief little chapter. It's like 15 pages, and it's basically like, it spent a little time with Roland infected at this time, because after he had his fingers cut off, and now he has not just an infection from not being able to, close the wounds up and stuff, but also possibly poison from the lobstrosities. But we come across our first door during this small little chapter thing. Can you describe how you felt the first time you came across this door? And yes, the first reading, if you can remember back to, for our constant readers. And this is something I'd like to establish that I should have established at the beginning. But most of us here are constant readers. Me, Steve, Namman, and Norrad have read the series in totality, right? Trev and Philtastic, this is their first read through. Okay, so describe how you felt the first time you came across the door. Go with you, Trev.
Just something out of place, something magical. Kind of like what's The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe? What book is that series? But just that
Narnia, yeah.
Narnia, just that other universe. Where is this going to lead? Just a lot of questions.
Did you think it was an actual door?
Yeah. A portal.
Off the bat, you knew it was a portal? That came to your mind?
Well, why else would a door be standing on a beach just in the middle of nowhere?
Steve.
I thought of the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy going through the into the Oz land. As soon as I read that part about the door, I was thinking about that. Then my head went to Dungeons and Dragons, like Trev was saying, magic, some kind of magical portal, levitating in the middle of the beach. And then the cool way that he described it, as he walked to the side of it and he got to a certain point of the thickness and the door completely disappeared, but the shadow was still there, and he was behind it and he could see the beach, but there was no door, and he had walked around again, and then the door reappeared again. It's like 1 minute it was not there, and then the next second it was. But yeah, I felt the same thing. There was definitely the doorway going back to wherever. Well, it had the word written on it, and we were told what the word was: the prisoner.
And it had the baboon also etched on it.
Yes, and his and it's the heroine was his prison.
Namman.
I'm a Star Trek fan, so I've seen doors like this before, portals
Yeah.
or things that like a train door opens and you're in each station you go to, you're in different world, or a little rock portal where you could go through and you're in a different Western time and whatnot. So I've seen this kind of stuff before, but way Stephen King does it, I haven't seen it like that. So I was really intrigued, and of course nowadays you got all kind of those, like the Loki series. You got these doors popping open and
Oh yeah.
different time and stuff. I mean, people seen it already. A lot of these already in theaters and stuff. So it may not be very new to them, but way they describe that door. I mean, Stephen King did it. I was just fascinated by it. So it was really different for me. It's like when you first time hear the joke, it's fun, right? It's funny. If someone tells it again, it's not as funny as the first time. So, anyway.
Depends on the joke.
Yeah. And how long you listen to it before, and all that.
Aaron.
I think the first time I read it, I felt a lot like Trev. I think Narnia was probably all I was really thinking about, because I had never really had any other. I couldn't really think of any other thing that I'd seen, like just a door. I thought it was very strange, very weird. I was like, what? And where is this story going now? Like, I also thought, like, did the Man in Black do this? Like, who did this? Why is there a door here? This is weird.
Phil.
I had a couple things that popped in my head when I started hearing about the door. I used to play a lot of Nintendo as a kid, and the first thing I thought of, just like everybody else, I know there was a sense of, okay, there's this magical door. It was kind of like if you've played Super Mario Brothers 2, occasionally you have these red doors that pop up, and Mario or whichever character would go through it, and it would be kind of like the negative of the world you were walking in.
Super Mario 2 was the best one, man. It was the one
with the doors.
It took so long for us to get over here.
That's good.
It was
keep going.
And I thought how that kind of connected to a little bit of our discussion back in the first book, when we were saying there's a theory that this is the afterlife or something like that. A couple other things that I noticed, Stephen, you were just saying that the door he looked one way and he saw it, and then he looked another way and it kind of disappeared. I thought the audio said something like he couldn't see the door initially, correct me if I heard this wrong, unless he was facing west.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, that kind of connected back to in the first book when he was talking about his training, wasn't it? If they went east, if he was successful in his training, he could go east, or if not, he could go west. Do I remember that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
if he succeeded, he went east, and if he failed, they went west.
Yeah. Yeah. So
exactly
I didn't
right.
know if this was connected to, let's say he is dead, if this is just kind of like an extended version of purgatory going through this door. The other thing that really kind of popped in my head, the way he was describing the monkey, I don't know, is anybody seen the HBO series, The White Lotus?
Yeah.
So that most recent season, if you look at the motifs and the frescoes during the credits, there was a very distinctive scene where they had a illustration of a monkey. I think it actually popped up a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. And it just kind of brought me right back to that, because as you know, the person who the monkey represented, good things didn't happen to them necessarily.
Right. Yeah, that's why this issue here has the monkey on the back, the tarot card.
Let me make you pay.
I'm on my phone, so it's kind of small. But
yeah, so there it is.
It's a scary ass monkey.
Yeah,
right,
it is.
Yeah, you want that off your back.
Baboons.
I can remember the first time I came across the scene, and even the multiple reads this time, it like it was the one thing that spoke out, and it's Roland's curiosity upon the door. You know, I mean, yes, it's magical, and I love that part of it, but like Stephen King actually spends some time like explaining that the way he investigates it, like the way he walks like around it, the way he like is in disbelief, and he does the whole like kind of like walking past it like 3-4 times because he still doesn't believe. And I don't know, there was something always in like there was like a couple things that like anchored to that first book. It like I mean, we just went through like Roland like barely escaping from these lobster things, and then him losing like needed limbs kind of thing, right? He's the right-handed gunslinger kind of thing, and then we come to this door and he's hurt, and like his first decision, and I don't know if I'm crazy, but I mean, you're missing limbs and stuff. I mean, most people would have just been like, "Oh, let me get the fuck out of here!" Like, open, I mean, it wouldn't have been this whole investigation, and like, so it does lead credence to that whole like,
I
hey,
don't know, man.
did Walter put this
I
here?
think I would have investigated long before I would have got into that door.
I think it goes back to his training, though. That's the way he was trained. If he
I mean,
wasn't a
also it says
gunslinger and he wasn't
prisoner. It
trained
says
the way
prisoner.
he is, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing and being able
Yeah.
to investigate. And he needed to be maimed for a reason.
Well,
You know?
By the way,
incidentally,
when he looked
that's
at,
on
he looked
purpose.
at east, there was a shadow there. Shadow.
So let me ask you guys a question. If he wasn't maimed, would he give up one of his guns?
no, I don't think so.
He needed to be maimed.
hmm Well, okay, so let's go back into that, because did anybody spot that out? That was specifically that first scene, the opening of our book. We went through the first book, and we have this protagonist, right? That I mean, literally, like killed a kid, like made a decision and sacrificed somebody that was in his group, kind of thing. So right off in this bat, this book. I mean, our main character is literally tortured to death. I mean, not to death, but like, I mean, he's stripped of his weapons. He's hurt on that side. While reading this, did any of y'all catch that was the whole? That was like the Stephen King way of saying, like, I know I did something horrible. Like, this is my way to pay for it. Here you go, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at it. Yep.
He needs to be maimed, but not only for the giving up his gun, but he needs the quartet. So he needed.
I was shocked.
Those.
That part, him getting maimed right there, just shocked me. I was like, how could the main character get maimed?
I know for Trev, like as a new reader, it shocked him. He was like, "What the hell?" I was getting messages behind the scenes, like, I mean, it's a shock. I mean, especially like, I mean, this dude is a gunslinger, right? We know he has to use fingers to operate the gun, and it's not the third thing that's taken from him. It's not the second thing. It's the first thing that's taken from him that the lobster grabs at. And, I mean, so we go through most of this book, and it kind of like this fear of like constantly like will Roland remember his left hand kind of thing, and it happens throughout the book. Like, I mean, where he's still going back to the ghost kind of thing of his fingers, or.
Mm-hmm.
My first reaction was, oh well.
I almost thought, would it force him to just use his left hand, and then that's well, never mind. I can't talk. Never talk. Say.
Go back to.
I was just thinking again. This is my first listen to or read through, however you want to put it. Being that he is the main character, there's a few more books to go. He's, it's going to be like, oh, he'll wake up somewhere and he'll get these limbs and what he's lost back, or this is a trick from the Man in Black.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like
like not the trick of Man in Black, but I was thinking more towards there had to be some way that he could get it back, or there has to be some magic going on or something.
That's what I thought too. After
this.
that last book, at the end of the last book, everything that was shown to him, that he would somehow magically be able to repair himself. but he has to repair his mind. He used too many people in that first book, and now he has to rely on others to help him.
My dude.
There you
And
go.
and
Perfect.
maybe that's the whole point, right? Maybe that's why this is the true beginning, and the first book, because there is something we haven't talked about, right? We've talked about Ka in a little bit, and we will a little bit else, but there was something else that's mentioned in that first book that plays a big part in the story, and it's called Kef. And Kef is known as the water of life and many other things. But to successfully do what we need to do in the series, it's a balance, right? And that's brought up pretty early on in the series. So if you look at everything through the first book, technically he didn't succeed at all. He failed at every aspect, If you take your concept of what a true hero should have done during those situations, he failed at every situation except for you could give him like a small one, maybe for David, maybe, but even a friend would have been like, I don't want you to die, David. So, so that you're exactly, that's why this is that true beginning, eh, maybe, this time around, I don't know.
A little humble pie for Roland.
And right off the bat, he's strictly wounded. Not only that, but he's been poisoned. And he's in a bad place, and that's where we start pretty much with our
Right. And he
hero, right?
notices the poison, like it's on his hands. His hands are turning red. It's starting to spread.
So we'll move forward unless anybody else has anything else to say about the just getting to the door, because we're about to get to the good stuff, right? The next chapter is Eddie Dean. Anybody have anything to say before we get to Eddie Dean?
The only thing that just kind of popped in my head now, the way, Steve, you were just describing, like he had to lose his gun, he had to lose this. It kind of makes me think a little bit about if you've read the original, to kind of tie it back to comics, I guess, if you were to read the original Thor Ragnarok story right around the time Avengers Disassembled was going on, and I haven't read it recently, I'm just kind of thinking off of memory. Thor had to give things up in order to ascend. And the major example is like he had to, Odin lost an eye, so to top that, Thor had to tear out both of his eyes.
Yeah.
So, Steve, the way that you just kind of put it makes me think maybe Roland has to lose these things in order to become stronger or to become something better for when he does see the Man in Black again.
What's a hero journey if you don't have the sacrifice and then the upgrade? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, all right, so our next pivotal chapter is titled Eddie Dean. Roland spends some time figuring out the door, investigates the door. Inside the door, we meet a drugged up Eddie, trial and error, and a drug smuggle that needs magical help in Popkins. All right, so during this time, we're basically, in a short amount of time, Roland like quickly finds out that what the door is, how the kind of roughly how the door works, and that comes pretty quickly. I guess my first question would be, how are ways in this short amount of time that we have seen Roland evolve since we knew him from the Gunslinger? I mean, during this pivotal chapter, we spend most of this chapter with Eddie kind of going through his ordeal on the plane. And Roland does go back and forth a couple times. I'll leave it at that, Trev.
I guess I don't understand what.
Have you seen? Have you had the basic question is, in this brief amount of time, has there been any indication that Roland is evolving or has?
He's more understanding. He takes a lighter tone with Eddie than I would have expected.
Steve?
I'm still rolling that question over my head. Go to Namman. I got to think about this one for a minute. That's a little deep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a building of a cut right?
Mhm.
Beginning of a building of cut. Roland is not very. I mean, so far, if you read the book one, uh, so far he's just been using people. He never, he never understood. Uh, he could never place himself in their shoes. Here he's sort of forced to see through their eyes, see through his catet's eyes, right from the beginnings, right? It's these doors are. I don't think these doors are cursed. These doors are a tool for him, blessing for him. He actually get to see, through his catet's eyes and start his character development where he's beginning to understand what they're going through. I think
Yes,
that's why he's more understanding.
you're exactly right. And that's. I mean, not only are we getting, because the door can be seen either way, right? Until certain things starts happening. And you're literally, once he walks in the door, we find out shortly that he is literally in another man's mind. Not only that, but he can somehow kind of perceive
Well, when
thoughts.
he first opens the door, he screams.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah,
way up in the air.
yeah. He doesn't understand.
Eddie's
I love
looking
that
out the
part. I love
window of the
that he first
airplane.
discovered that. That's why I think Stephen King is such an awesome writer because it took me a while for me to understand what was happening, right?
Well,
It took,
Same.
like what he was looking down at the planet Earth, I'm going, what's going on? And then he turns around and sees, stewardesses, I mean, what do you call it? Some cop lady, what do you call it?
The army lady.
yeah, the army.
And army lady, right? And I'm going, what's going on? Then when all that, come to me where he's actually in someone else's mind and looking through someone else's eyes, that's when I'm going, oh my gosh, then I'm going back and try, what I was puzzled about. He answered all of those as he was writing that. I'm going,
Mhm.
he put all these visuals in my head right there. So that's why I like his writing because he's able to do that.
I love it. Aaron?
As far as evolution as a character, how did I noticed him evolving? Roland, like, I don't know. I just saw it like, he's just pushing forward, and he's um
And
I
boy,
guess because the Man in Black showed him, and the Oracle, like he knows, like, so like he is in a way recognizing where his path, and he knows which way he needs to go to keep going towards the tower. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't really see a lot of evolution yet. I guess it was still too early. But when he first found the door, when he jumps into Eddie's mind, that's where I kind of noticed, like, maybe he kind of took a step back. That's where I noticed he slowed down a little bit. Maybe he isn't pushing so far. Maybe he's like, okay, maybe I need to figure out what's going on before I jump, before I leap, or look where I am, or look before I leap, kind of thing.
It's also something like brilliant that you just brought up, right? Because in the first book, we are told that he's not really good at seeing around corners, kind of thing. So him taking that time to actually like investigate, it's like he's going back to his real roots, kind of thing. Like maybe in the first book he wasn't doing things as he should have been. He was just kind of like rushing the moments to get to where he needed to go. So I'd say you're like 100% right. Added on to what Namman put on there, some excellent views. Phil,
See, I agree with Aaron. I didn't really see it as an evolution per se. I think that this feeling of understanding or trying to be more understanding wasn't so much, oh, he's changing as a character. It's, all right, I don't know where I am. I don't quite know what's going on. What's this world around me? So I'm going to try to figure out what I need to figure out in order to. I mean, at this point, I think he's still pretty much in a survival kind of mindset. The one thing I will note, I think he's more, or I should say, I think he's less focused than he was in the first book. I don't even think the tower was mentioned until about halfway through this whole part that we're reading. And, that's a big difference from the first book, where I felt like every other paragraph it was the tower, the tower, the tower. So I don't see it again as evolution. I do see it right now as, at least at this point in the book, a means to an end for him.
I did think it was cool, like I was saying, when he jumped in Eddie's head, he wanted to figure it out. Like, he wanted to figure it all out. Could he take something from Eddie, bring it to his, like the Popkins, could he take something from his and bring it into Eddie's? And he figured out he can't do that. He's figuring out what he can do, what he can't do.
I think that also goes back to the end of the first book. Everything that he was shown has kind of changed him mentally. In the first book, he was just a hard man. He had his guns. He lived by his guns. And now all that's taken away from him, along with all that knowledge. He's right. He's right to be cautious.
Everybody has had great points, and touching base on what Phil said, the way I always kind of like saw the evolution of this character was kind of like a progression, but also regression, because once we enter Eddie's mind with Roland, it's the first time we really see Roland scared. He literally opens the door and he's freaked the fuck out because he doesn't know what's going on. And then even when he goes in there, I mean, even though he's trying to deduce and like gather himself while he's in there, there's still an amount of like, he doesn't exactly know what's going on, this kind of thing. It's almost like, in the first book, we have this like sure positive, like, main antagonist, main protagonist character. And in this one, it's kind of like, it's almost shown as like we don't know at this point.
Showing a lot of vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Getting damaged by the crab or by the lobstrosities. He doesn't know where he's like kind of going to fish out of water. He doesn't,
Another thing is that it's kind of the first time we see Roland actually needing anything. Like, I mean, you're talking about the first book. We went through parts of the book where water was a thing. I mean, he was going through a desert, and that did not faze him. There wasn't a time where he was like, "I need some water." Like, I mean, we're talking about he had fell down almost dead to the point where he was damaging himself up until the way station, and there was no need. It was just the only need you could say was the need to continue going forward, kind of thing. But like,
he's not invincible.
No, and we see that really quick. But I for me, it was the this kind of like, with Eddie, it wasn't just one thing he needed. He needed medicine. He needed food. He needed understanding of what was going on. Like, why was this guy important? I mean, that there was like a ton of stuff that was surrounded by that one word, just need, and it was, for me, it was good to see, because Roland goes through the whole first book and he doesn't need that. I mean, when you come across Jake, he didn't really need Jake. It's not like if he had him or didn't have him, he would have added anything to the story. We know differently, but like, I mean, the need wasn't there. Poor R.I.P. Jake. All right, so first impressions of Eddie. Trev.
Just a carefree junkie. I don't know, nothing.
Did you even think we'd be spending like, pretty much the whole book with this dude?
No, I didn't know what to think, especially going through the door and entering his eyes and his mind was definite 180 from the first book. I don't know.
Steve?
I thought that Eddie was just as damaged as Roland. They both got that big monkey on their back, so they got a lot of similarities there. But Eddie had that kind of fire to him, but he was weak because of the addiction that was on him. That was a big problem with him. But that was my first impression. I didn't think that he was going to. Well, I knew he was integral to the story. He must have been. Otherwise, Stephen King wouldn't have put him there in the path. But I thought, geez, what a weak character. Hopefully, now Roland's got to build this guy up. It's like, geez, he's got a long road ahead of him to try and turn this guy around.
It's awesome. Namman. You muted.
You muted.
You good?
Yeah. Jake was. I mean, I want to say that Jake wasn't. He was needed. It's like when.
He was.
Yeah, when water is God. When God wills it, water will be available. What was the exact phrase? So right now, his water is Katet, the doors. That's his water.
Okay.
He's when God wills it, he'll get it, right? The doors appears and he got his fingers chopped off and he's in vulnerable position and he's trying to learn this new universe and he needs those Eddie or whoever comes along, he needs them. So God is willing it, in my view. And far as Eddie is concerned, soon as well, this is not the part, but as soon as Nolan was actually complimenting Eddie right from the beginning, because in comparison to rest of the people, you see all these people wasting papers and living, luxury life and being fat and not alert and except for the army lady, But he actually saw that Eddie had a potential right from the beginning. So I thought that Eddie would be a character that would be around for a while when I first read it.
Eddie took a long time to grow on me. I was kind of like Philtastic. I didn't like when the narrator, the audiobook, I was reading it. I didn't like all the slang and the language and the mobsters. Like, I couldn't relate to that. Like, I don't like the Godfather movies. I can't sit through a Godfather movie. I've never watched one.
Same.
I'm just not into those type things, but I found an appreciation for it later on. And the second read through, when I came through, I really enjoy Eddie so much more than I did the first time.
Very interesting. Phil.
Yeah. I mean, my first impression of Eddie, kind of relating back just to what Aaron said, if I had to equate him to a character, let's say in a mob movie, he kind of reminded me of Henry Hill later on in Goodfellas, when he's kind of at the start of his downward trend, where he thinks he's got things taken care of, but he's really a mess. I certainly didn't think we'd be spending as much time as we did with him. And it became clear about midway through, okay, this is somebody who's going to be on the journey for a while and for some obvious reasons, but he didn't sound like the kind of guy you wanted to be around in particular. Like he's got that kind of a slippery kind of feel to him.
I have a question for the rest of the people. Did you?
Yeah.
Though was labeled prisoner, when you first saw Eddie, did you feel like he was the prisoner?
No.
I did.
I did.
Yep.
Trev.
I did too.
Yep.
Great concept, right? Because who is the prisoner that's featured on the door? We go through the whole experience, our whole reading experience, and it's pretty much that one door, and that is like a running thought that should be in your head, like, is Eddie the prisoner or is Roland? And to highlight on what Namman said, that's actually brought up by Eddie after he's removed his, baboon kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the first time, and I've never liked Eddie this time through. There's like real world experiences do play a part when you're reading books, and I have too many real world experiences with people just like Eddie and Henry, and they're people I avoid like the plague unless I just don't have to, kind of thing. And the way he writes Eddie, like during that time when I was reading this, I had a friend that acted just like Eddie. Like, he was an addict, and like that was all he thought about. Like some of the stories directly related between Henry and Eddie, like, and that part with Roland saying like, "Oh, I've heard this story before." The same here, buddy. So I can say I've never liked Eddie. Oh, this Eddie. I should say, because by the end of this reading, and I keep saying that, let me rephrase it, because we do get to see briefly a different version of the Eddie. Okay, so
Going
that
back to
leads.
what Namman was saying
Oh,
about
go
the water and about God providing, I keep on thinking back to the end of the first book when the Man in Black basically told him that he's not gaining powers, but he's learning what he has already. That these doors on the beach are somehow, even though he's trying to get to them, and he always gets to the next goal whenever whenever he runs out of something or whenever he has no more options. So it's like it's almost him, in my opinion, or what I'm thinking, putting the doors there. Somehow he has control over that.
It is a great theory and wonderful thoughts to have at this moment. I can say that's exactly what you're supposed to be thinking, kind of thing. There's multiple routes to that thinking because, I mean, we were told that Roland does have some powers, by an incredible source. Let's just say that. But
I just
I
show
mean,
that before I go. Here's Eddie.
let me pull it up.
Naked Eddie.
Oh, my favorite scene. I love that scene. And I love the art in this book. It just paints a whole different picture, especially from the first book. It's all like fantasy art. This one, it's more like realistic, like abstract art.
Yeah, they have like some Sandman like artists.
So I guess we're at the hour point. Let's go ahead and do the giveaway, Trev. If you can be so kind as pull that up for me. And what will we giving away? Let me make myself bigger up.
What do you want the hashtag to be?
You do Eddie. We're going to be giving away this brand new copy of Stephen King's The Wasteland. It's brand ordered, brand new. I mean, never been read except maybe flipped through a couple times. This is the next book that we are reading. So, I mean, if you don't want this book, please don't apply for the giveaway. And this is for U.S. and Canada only. I'm sorry, I can't really afford shipping everywhere. But, I mean, if it does fall on somebody that is out of the states and Canada, we'll work somehow. I don't know.
Make them a tag, giveaway tag, or tag someone for giveaway.
Yeah,
there you go. Give it to somebody.
prize tag somebody. Yeah, that's perfect.
Prize tag someone. Yeah, that's it.
That's a good one, Norm. Or Namman.
And we only have like 6 people, so
It's
I
not.
guess
It's not
Norman's
Nam.
got to go to work.
Nam.
Hmm?
It's not Nam, and it's Nam.
Yeah.
Nom. Yeah, he's right. He's Nom now.
but I do have a couple more questions after these messages. Yeah, I guess whenever it hits 6, right? There's only like 6 people here.
Yep.
And if y'all want to enter, y'all can enter too. It's for
Got
everybody.
3 in there.
I'm pretty sure all of us have the books.
Yep.
I'm gonna buy the
Multiple
box set.
copies, hard covers,
Yeah,
soft
I got
covers,
copies.
many
I'm looking
editions,
for hardcovers. I like to have all hardcovers.
first editions.
I kept on
See,
thinking
they
the first book was like J.R.R. Tolkien, and the second book was like Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you one thing I didn't like about Stephen King's writing. After this,
Okay. See who's gonna be.
Tina, come on, Tina.
Gonna be.
Las
Las
Cruces.
Cruces.
Going to New
All right.
Mexico.
Read
Las
it.
Cruces, hit me up on IG. Give me your deets, and I'll get it shipped out. You're gonna give me like by the end of the week, something like that. But yeah, but I mean, the whole reason they're doing a giveaway, they had tricked me, and the editions are so close. I can show you real quick. But I am trying to get like a specific set, and my set that I've been wanting has this at the bottom, and I didn't realize that it's a smaller version, like only by like a tad. So that must be. I didn't know they had like a softback edition and like a mini softback edition. Like, what the
Yep.
hell? Tricksters.
I would assume there's been quite a few printings, huh?
A lot.
I
Oh,
think
yeah, oh,
different
yeah.
publishing companies take over the
Mhm.
rights and all.
I forget who did I think the original was like Signet, and then they went to Plume, something
Yeah.
like that.
I bet the original print is going to be expensive.
Oh, I want to say for first
It's like
edition.
comics. It depends on condition.
Yeah, I want to say for like a first edition, it looks really good. I don't know about the grade or whatever. I want to say it's going to run you like $1,000. Like it's like and it's not super expensive if you think about it. But like now, I haven't looked up how much the original like the short stories that were featured in the sci-fi and fantasy magazine. Those they probably I don't know. All right, so let's get back on topic. Naman, you said you had something you wanted to say before.
Oh, there's one thing that Stephen King style writing that I don't like. I think it's not. Sometimes it's not timeless. Because
I can agree. That is maybe that's just something I should have stated. But there are going to be some things, and that's just consistent of writing, right? Novels in general, but there are certain aspects of the story that are a little outdated. I mean, there are some words that come up during that nowadays are kind of frowned on. The only thing I can say, especially to new readers, is just remember the time frame that this book takes. It was written
what,
during 87.
what I'm saying is that he make a lot of pop culture references in his books,
Oh
and
yeah, that too.
you have to be the person of the time to understand those pop culture references.
I didn't
Right.
know what Hey Jude was till I.
What?
Really?
Not till
You
I
didn't know
read
it?
it. Hey, I was young the first time I read it.
No, the only okay, because there are a lot of musical references up in the first book. It's just Hey Jude, and then there's Christian music that they talk about. Okay, already in this book, I want to say there's 9 different musical references from Barbara Streisand to, like Hey Jude does come up again in this book, like Eddie's singing it near the end. Um, uh,
And he describes certain people by describing some famous
he
person.
does Ronald
Yeah.
Reagan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like another one of those things. It's a timepiece kind of thing. We're reading about the 80s, so like it's always good to have like a general. It's kind of like watching Stranger Things. You should
Yeah,
have like a.
so you might appreciate it more if you're from the boomers or certain generation because you
But,
could understand the references, but sometimes the reference can get away from you. So
okay.
just a warning.
I can say in the next part, because Eddie, most of us can relate because I think we were from that era. Okay, and now, like our next part 2 to this, what we'll be reading, like there's going to be some older, like references that are before our time. It is something like that where there are going to be some things that are just out of place to you because you weren't from that time, or I don't know. All right, so a big one, right? So we have met Eddie Dean. We're on the airplane. Um, you know, so addiction is pretty prevalent through the reading. What impact does it have on Eddie's character development in the small amount of time that we are reading with him? Or I'll give you an easy one. Stephen King is trying to say something about addiction. What's he trying to say?
I'm gonna step out, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, Aaron.
Take care.
Have a good one.
See you, Aaron.
I mean, I
Eh.
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. This can be. I mean, it's at this point. Some of these questions are just random.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an obvious kind of iteration to Poison. I think it's, you know, now that I think about it, it's a little strange that when Roland walked through the door, he was affected by the poison from these lobster creatures, and at the same time he jumps into Eddie's body, who's, you know, got poison in his system. It's like this thing that has just kind of linked them together at this point in time.
Trev, Steve, Namman, any thoughts? Trev?
I saw his evolution as far as the story progressed. He was thinking about it less. Like as his mind was on it more, on different things, his mind was on that less. So he referenced him thinking about it less and wanting to fix less.
Yeah.
Steve?
I don't know if that has to do with the fact that Roland
It
was in his
does.
mind.
It does. Keep it there. Keep it there. I love it. I'm going to touch base on it.
Yeah,
Steve?
you're in the zone there.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, because he talked about you know, having control, not doing the jumps and the jives and the jigs
Right.
and all the stuff, because he wanted his fix. When they had him in the I guess we're going a little bit past this, when they had him in customs there, and you know, he was going to do his jiving and his jigging and his moving, and that kind of showed me right there that maybe he can beat this thing, because he was getting kind of sick of it, you know.
Namman.
I always saw when Eddie's always comparing himself to his brother, who has a step. So Eddie hasn't stepped over yet to the Neverland that we cannot come back from. You know, Eddie still has a chance to throw the monkey off his back. I always thought that part was always there throughout from the beginning, because he always talks about Henry, you know, he has to take care of him, and so he always as long as dude has a responsibility, he won't step over. So
Let me ask you a question.
So it was a huge contrast between the two characters. One has to step over, and one hasn't yet. And so
Let me ask you
go
a
ahead.
reiterating question in there, Namman, because you touching on some good stuff there. So I'm Stephen King, right? And I have an addiction that I don't really see as an addiction at this time. Do you believe that writing that character of Eddie and that chance of, like, you know, like you said, he hadn't stepped over the abyss or whatever, you know, was that like him telling himself in real life that there was a possibility that if ever went that bad, he could, you know, get the monkey off his back?
And first thing, I mean, first thing you have to admit is first thing you gotta do is know that you have a problem, right? You gotta know that you have. That's why you Alcohol Anonymous. You go to Alcohol Anonymous and they want you to say, "Hey, I have alcohol. I'm an alcoholic." That's first thing that you have to admit, right? If you don't know that you have a problem, then you won't solve the problem, right? If same thing with any kind of things like racism. If you don't know that you have a racism tendency, and you don't know you have that problem, you're not going to solve it. You think I'm not a racist. I don't have that kind of problem. Then you will never solve it if you have it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, yeah.
I'd be curious to know if he has any friends that he grew up with that he wrote Henry based off of, to where there was that person in his life that went over the edge, so he never took that that leap over the edge because of that person.
It's interesting, and we do, or some of us do know that he does take stuff from real life and incorporate it into his, writing. I mean, most of the what ifs are stuff that he sees from real life, but characters and stuff. I mean, there are like certain characters featured in this story, or that are specifically the editor that took the chance, or stuff like that. So I could totally seeing that being a thing. I don't. It would be something I would have to investigate. I don't know if like it's something for some reason I've never looked into. If any of these characters featured in the Dark Tower are physically based on, real people in real life, even if momentarily, kind of thing. I don't know, but that's a good thought. Actually, something I never thought about. Phil, you got anything to add?
I don't necessarily know that he's too far in, like everybody's saying that he's not too far past the point of no return, only because it seems like, especially towards the end of this reading, not to jump too far ahead, he's almost saying to Roland, look, I need this. So I don't know if that's something that just kind of breaks him from that, but yeah, I really don't have anything else to add for that.
No, that's perfect, and y'all brought up some, some great points to it. I mean, it's some of these things are unknown, of course. Like, I mean, who knows what Stephen King was going through, saying, "Hey, Roscoe, thanks, Trev." No, but I mean, it's something that was a main theme in the first book, right? I mean, it's well, there is a certain tag words at the beginning of these books, resumption, redemption, those kind of things. Addiction is definitely one of them. I mean, because we are, it's I mean, no spoilers, but at the end of this read that we partake, I mean, it comes up in context, right? The addiction part of it, and in a different way, not just the heroin, not just, no, as far as Roland for the tower, right? Incidentally, we were talking about speed and stuff like that, and we were talking about, like, Trev brought up something like so important about how Eddie was kind of like not really thinking about the hits a certain time, and stuff like that, but ironically mirrored by Roland, right? Because like somebody had brought up, he wasn't really talking about the tower a whole lot during that time. So I mean, it's another, like, another aspect of the addiction part that he put in there, kind of thing, like a weird dynamic, I guess.
Let me ask you though, do you think, for everybody, do you think Roland in a way seems Eddie as almost an inferior, just because in the first book it almost seems like he doesn't feel sorry for the people who get hooked on the devil grass, like almost like there's something almost kind of pathetic about it. And then in this book, he even, I think, at one point makes the iteration between, oh, this is kind of like people who use devil grass. Do you think he kind of looks down on Eddie because he's associating that?
I'll give my answer first, and I'll let everybody else go if they have something different. But I want to say it's a yes and no. I want to say there are times when Roland does look down on Eddie because he instantly associates what he's going through. But like somebody else had mentioned, like Roland's also like poisoned when he's in there, So he is kind of, it's having similar effects to what Eddie's going through. But I like peppered throughout the read all the way through. I want to say there are moments when Roland does look down on Eddie, and there are times that he like amazingly looks up to Eddie, like is surprised by some of his actions, kind of thing. Trev?
I don't think he really looks down on him. I think that he's just more, it's almost like an out of body experience that it is, because he's in his mind and he feels better being because he's messed up. So whenever he goes through the door and he's in his mind, he feels better from it. So I think that's one of the reasons he takes more of a light tone, and he's not as hard as he was in the first book.
Steve.
I noticed when he got into Eddie's head and he started noticing how lax everybody was, his brain kind of went right into the teacher mode, and Eddie is the apprentice almost immediately, and said, all right, we got to start teaching him a few things here and start passing on the knowledge. So I'm not sure if it's an inferior thing. It probably is to an extent, but it's teacher student time is what it is right off the bat. He sees the potential. He knows there's potential there, and he needs this guy, so he's got to bring him up to speed.
Perfect.
Yeah, I felt that right from the beginning. And also you notice that Eddie is using Nolan as a crutch. When Nolan is leaving his mind, he didn't like it because he brought.
Very true.
He was Nolan was his crutch, and when I cannot be that strong, like
Yeah,
it's very true, because there were multiple times during the read where Roland does have to leave for various reasons, and during those times we are with Eddie, and Ed, there are moments where Eddie was like, man, I wish he was here, kind of thing, and he directly says stuff like that, and I want to say it's like 3 times during our whole reading.
Yeah, so it's like going through Roland withdrawal. He's going to same thing. His drugs are crutch. He always has a crutch.
He's a Roland junkie.
Well, almost going back to my first point, whenever Roland is in his mind, he thinks less about the drugs, but Roland is there. Yeah. So that kind of like reinforces the fact that he's still a junkie. He just kind of changes.
And benefit for Roland is that because he's in his mind, he's more empathetic than. He's not only sympathetic, but he's actually empathetic, right? So,
yeah, good one. Very good.
I don't know that I have anything to add on to that. It's kind of making me think maybe the reason it said prisoner on the door wasn't necessarily how Roland was going to view Eddie, but how pretty much while Roland was occupying, and I guess the way that they kind of end the chapter, Eddie pretty much is Roland's prisoner. He doesn't want to necessarily go on this journey. At least that's the impression I had towards the end of it.
Well, you're not. Yeah, you're not too far off, because in the actual reading and at the end part, Eddie accuses Roland of that specifically, right? He calls him a kidnapper, But even though we know differently, Roland specifically asked Eddie if he wanted, it wasn't like he was kidnapped or anything like that. So I always took it like the drugs, the addiction. So,
and Roland directly calls him the prisoner once in his head too. Actually, he tells him
Don't call me that. Why are you calling me that?
27 times is what I have noted down. Yeah, that I found. 27 times he does, and not only does he refer to Eddie as the prisoner in his mind, but he calls Eddie the prisoner. Like he straight out calls him that, and to the point where Eddie doesn't like being called, where he's like, "Why are you calling me that?"
Until he figures out Eddie's name, he calls him prisoner.
Was it exactly 27 times?
Yeah.
What's 7 plus 2?
Okay, so
you guys are all going to start doing this. You're all going to do it.
He gave him a choice, but what choice was there? Stay there and get arrested, all the cops busting in, or you know what I mean? It really wasn't a choice.
I mean, it's a prisoner of circumstance, I guess, at that point.
Yeah,
but Lawrence.
But he could have stayed, and yes, he would have been arrested. But he still would have been in that world. Yes, it wouldn't have been like the best outcomes. If he was slick enough, he might have been able to talk his way out of that. I don't know. He might have gone to jail for a couple murders. I don't know. He was
it was a bloodbath.
Well, okay. Up until that point, let's break down some things. He was kidnapped from his home, after being, and he was being watched. So they saw him. So that's why the SWAT was instantly there during the shootout, because the place was described to be pretty distant away from other businesses. So they knew he was in there. They knew he was going to do the deal. So like, no,
And there's a huge vacuum in mobster wars, so he could have become a next mobster leader.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but okay, but the point is, during the reading, we are specifically in Roland's head when that question comes up, and it's not. He could have taken Eddie. He could have just grabbed him through the door and left. That's what they needed to do. That then in the first book we saw that's what he would have done. No, the difference is he took the time, like thought about it, and he's like, no, I want Eddie to come on his own free will, regardless of how, and that was the change, and going back to my first question, that's the way I saw it. The second you see Eddie and Roland together, there's a difference in the motif. It reads different. They feel complete almost, because they're both going through similar afflictions. But like all of a sudden, all these things start happening the right way. Like all of a sudden, Roland has this magical way of like getting rid of the drugs. He knows exactly how to incorporate it. No, all through all that, like, and that's the way I always took it. Like, was like, once they walked through the door, and there were problems that arose, but they were like easily like fixed problems quickly. Like Roland needed food. How long did that take him to figure out? Like, hey, I need a sandwich. What are a popkin?
Tuna fish.
Tuda.
Yeah, that was funny.
Tuna fish, yep.
So this brings up one of my favorite questions out of this whole read, and something that maybe a lot of people overlook. But during the Gunslinger, we have heard numerous voices in Roland's head that sometimes critique him, sometimes give him advice, sometimes they're just plain old ass flashbacks. Okay, but in this book, we get a brand new voice in Roland's head. We get the Man in Black. Multiple occasions in this book, Roland constantly is hearing Walter O'Dim in his head. Why? Out of all people, right? He's seen it as an antagonist at this point. Yes, we did get some information for him, but we still do know that he does work for the main bad guy, right? Why is our main hero all of a sudden have this dude's voice in his head? Trev.
Damn.
If you don't have an answer, that's fine. This is deep.
He was so obsessed with him that he can't let go of him. That, I don't know, everything that he showed him changed him. So I think that he's just going to forever be there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, that's cool. He needs to have Walter in his head now, because that point is past now. He's captured him. They had their talk. He drew the cards, and now he's on a new path to the tower. And yeah, the information that Walter gave him is pivotal to how he's going to move forward. Walter's actually kind of helping him now, because his boss has told him to do so, because all the events that are going to unfold in the future have to unfold in a certain way. So he's got him in his head, and he's going to roll that way. I'm not going to give up anymore there.
You really can't. You really can't. This one's a hard one for the constant readers, because there is a true answer to this. Namman, my boy. What you got for me? I can come back to you if you need. It's hard. It's a hard one. Phil,
good question.
Why do you think Walter is in Roland's head?
Yeah, when I was listening to it at first, I thought it was just the Man in Black being the Man in Black. He's taunting Roland in a way. In this way, maybe kind of like dangling the carrot in front of him. But now I'm thinking, because we're talking about in terms of Eddie and the prisoner, I'm thinking maybe just as Roland is in Eddie's head for a purpose to drive him towards his goal, the Man in Black is in Roland's head to drive him towards this greater purpose that his boss has, basically.
Love it. Love it. Namman, you got anything?
I no.
It's
Just
this
like
is
Phil say, if Roland can be in Eddie's head, why couldn't the Man in Black be in Roland's head? And what happened to him when after the clever? What happened to the Men in Black?
mhm.
Right?
He does state that during this book that currently Walter O'Dim is dead, and he does use parentheses when he uses the dead term because that's what his eyes saw, but not what his heart believed. Okay, so I'll say the way I've read it multiple times because there's three big moments where the Man in Black at this moment in the story does talk to Roland in his head. Is filled. I want to say I'm right there with you that at first it seems like it's a carrot with the dangling mule kind of situation, but then we get to like the second and third part and it seems like something else, like literally he's ultimately helping Roland because he's not really. The first time he does criticize it a little bit, he's like, "Hey, you dumb, you're always going to be like but the second time we come across the thoughts, it's more like kind of like Court would be talking to him, like more like instructive, like kind of leaning back to the palaver kind of thing. This is a hard question, even for constant readers. At this time, there are some mysteries in this story that have not been answered. I'm not going to say this isn't one of them because this one is answered. Haha. But just note that why is this guy in this dude's head all of a sudden? So we're gonna jump forward a little bit, and we got contact and landing, and Roland and Eddie go through the clearing of the customs. Eddie goes through the door. It's a brief little period in the story where we come to like this kind of epic conclusion because during this time, Eddie has been drug smuggling back from the Bahamas to New York, and he has 2 pounds of is it cocaine? But he has 2 pounds of cocaine under his armpits, and his it not necessarily due to him, but because the flipping with Roland and the army stewardess that kind of notices Eddie, and that kind of leads to this whole like they really thinking he's a terrorist. I love that they don't come to the drug conclusion. But
yeah,
he had no real general like question that goes into this besides like when you were reading this as a first time reader, how did you think this situation was going to get solved, and was it exactly the way it was solved kind of thing? I'm going to go with Steve first, going back to your we'll stick with Steve. I'll come back to you.
All right. Yeah, I felt it was going to happen exactly the way because he had already experimented. He could bring stuff through. So then he even hinted he's formulating a plan, right? So he's like, okay, he's starting to get a plan. And this is it goes back to one of your earlier questions about him evolving because he never really was much of a thinker or a deep planner. But even then Court comes into his head. Even a shitty plan is better than no plan. So he's coming up with something. And yeah, it fell right into the way I thought it was. And this is when it was starting to get really good for me because I was like, all right, now we're getting some meat and potatoes. And this is going to be really cool here, how he's going to pull one over on the custom agents and get through. Magic.
Trev.
Yeah, the same. I figured it would happen that way. The part that kind of got me was the difficulty it was to do it. A lot more difficult than I thought.
It was
duct taped all up.
That was Gorilla Tape, man, before Gorilla Tape was invented.
Right. Shit wasn't going nowhere. No, but what you got?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When Coin disappearing, I mean, all that experiment he was doing, that sort of, give you a hint as to how he's going to solve the problem. Bringing things back and forth. I mean, I sort of knew that was going to be kind of he's a superpower. Throughout the whole.
Yeah, that he was going to go back and use it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
superpower. I like how you put that.
Yeah.
Honestly, whenever the whole drawing of the three, whenever all this whole concept started, I thought it would be more like a quantum leap type thing.
Yeah.
Where he would have to go do something in somebody else's body to redeem them or something.
When did Quantum Leap came out? When did it came out?
80 something. I don't remember.
I think around that time.
Was it
Without
around that
looking.
time?
Yeah.
I think so.
You might have stole
I
it.
remember. Yeah, I don't know.
Stole little bits and pieces here.
But I can remember watching Quantum Leap as a kid, and I remember reading this as a teen, and this was still brand new for me. You know, I mean, like I don't remember this like it still felt different from Quantum Leap kind of thing, but it is almost similar, you know, kind of thing.
It's similar, but it's not the same kind of. It's not the same concept. Yeah.
Phil, you got it.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be the oddball. I thought for sure he was going to get caught. Because again, I felt, even though he was a slippery guy, I felt like maybe he was a little overconfident. I felt maybe the stewardess was onto him, and I thought really just because of the way that what we knew of him at this point, you know, again, Roland walked in a door saying the prisoner. I thought, okay, he's going to get arrested. Roland's going to be in jail with him, and then they're going to somehow just disappear out of it, like out of 12 Monkeys or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that could be another way.
Yeah,
for it
me
to go,
too.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the thinking because, like, I'm with these guys. I kind of, you know, I mean, he dropped the clues on, you know, what was kind of coming. You know, I will say, like, it was hard to imagine the first time. I remember rereading that passage on, like, when, like, he did bring Eddie over. Like, I was like, how does this work? Like, he was in his head, behind his eyes, and then they like, but technically, there's a door there for them too, right? No, but I will say, like, there's like two things that I can remember as a new reader was the difficulty part. I don't like, I can remember, and even reading it this time, I was like, why? Like, just grab the knife and just, you know, like it can't be that hard, you know. But like, I will appreciate this the first time we get that ticking time clock thing back, you know. And Stephen King loves to use this kind of, you know, aspect of writing, but this, like, oh my god, they're almost going to get caught, they got to fin, you know, like, you know, so that there's, you know, you get to this point in the book, and now we're at the speed reading part. You know, everything up until this point has been slow, and like Steve said, this was like the culmination of a bunch of setup, right?
To me, it was painful. That's
the idea.
It was.
That was the grip. That was what gets you. It sucked you in
at
at
that
that
how
point.
you gonna take that tape off with
Like,
that
son
knife?
of a bitch, get the damn thing off. If you were watching the movie, you're on the edge of the seat going, for fuck's sake, just get that shit off of you.
Come on, Eddie.
Just out of curiosity,
So,
did they, or how did they address this in the movie?
They didn't.
none of this. So far, you haven't none. No,
None of it was in there.
Yeah, none of this from the gunslinger or up until the point we've read. They had
None of the characters.
portals.
Jake, that's it. Yeah, Jake and
Yeah,
Roland.
Jake.
But-
Yeah, and Steven. Yeah, we'll talk about the movie like in a different.
Yeah, that's a whole disaster for another
I
day.
was because movie was basically proving that they weren't going to be drawing of the three.
Yeah. They proved that they needed to do a series to make it work because there's just way too many books and way too much information to be thrown in a 3-hour movie. Christ, even Lord of the Rings didn't do that.
Even from what you know, like just talking about the beginning scene of the movie, it's they literally took like two different moments from the books, and that's the first scene of the movie, and then from there they kind of go.
I didn't like the portal either. I didn't like their portal.
Yeah. Okay, back on track because that's a whole that's a rabbit hole. Damn, actually that actually got me to lose my train of thought. All right, so we're basically at the custom part. You know, we're at the plane. We're at, you know, they're doing the drugs. I will say that it's one of the funnier lines that Eddie comes up with, and it's kind of, for me, the first time that I started to like Eddie, because yes, we're going through this whole like frustrating scene of getting the drugs off, right? But right after that, he goes back in the bathroom, and like he has to explain why he didn't hear the knocking and banging and all this stuff, and his explanation was he was taking a shit, which is legit, right? But then they're like, well, why didn't you answer the door? And he's all like, well, I couldn't lean forward, and like, and the custom guy actually like buys that. But then like they have this whole thing where it's like you get to get in his head for a second, and the custom guy's like, did nobody ever tell this guy how to lean forward? Like, and like for me, it was actually one of the funny, like the moments where I was like, yeah, I can kind of see this being a different version of a character if he didn't have these complications with him, kind of thing,
Yep.
He was definitely showed me that he was
Thanks, Rob.
great improviser, right? I mean,
Mhm.
because that wasn't Roland's solution, that was Eddie's solution.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
He thought of that on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there was nothing in the shitter.
No.
Yeah, but
Which
he
I
had
always-
an answer for that too.
Yeah, he did.
He's like, sometimes it doesn't come or whatever.
Exactly. Like this guy comes up with shit on the fly, man. It's great. Literally.
And I will say, like leading up to this moment, there was a couple other moments for me that kind of like because like it's such a strange scene, right? We're traveling with a dude that enters a door and he's in somebody's head, right? So, and then all of a sudden we're in Eddie's thoughts with Roland up there in his head, right? And then, like, there's moments where like Eddie notices that someone's there and he's like, man, this is the drugs. Like, did I just see my eyes change color? Like, is there somebody staring back at me? Like, those kind of moments spread throughout, and they're little bitty nuggets, like up until like Roland finally does start talking to him. But even when Roland does start talking to him, it's like like right off the bat, like, okay, like he doesn't even question it, he didn't even go back to the drug thing, like, oh, I'm hallucinating, like there's somebody in my head talking to me, like he's telling me to, like, like but no, those were like small moments that I did start appreciating Eddie, like that wasn't there in the beginning, I can say, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He does think back over multiple times. He's like, am I just going to wake up? Am I still on the airplane?
I want to say that whole like scenarios, like for me, was beautifully written. I mean, you're talking about still young Stephen King, and like just that whole transition of like going through a door and then you're in somebody's head and during like a like a high altitude plane flight, like, and just that experience for someone that's not of that world, I mean, and it doesn't, when you read it, at least for me, it doesn't come off like, once you start getting all the context clues, it's very visual. It's very, you can imagine Eddie running back to the bathroom the first time he does it when he's almost about to puke, and that's because Roland just came into his mind and he's like, ah.
Roland did have a little snippet of our universe in the first book on the way station.
Yeah, he did, because technically that scene
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that scene, I mean, because he got to see quite a bit from Walter, and, some from different angles, right? But then technically when he hypnotized Jake, like the way that scene is explained is he's like one in the same mind as Jake was walking through that day. Like he saw that day as Jake explained it, kind of thing. Is there anything anybody wants to add? I want to say the custom part for me was like that some of the more pleasant reading when we got to that point, like the bathroom scene, the beach scene, and then we get to the custom scene.
Yeah,
For me,
I thought that was a really fun part. It was a fun part.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely tried to make Eddie more likable.
Mm-hmm. And capable, right? Because like he's sitting there, like, I mean, he knows at this point that they have nothing on him in the customs thing, and like he's like, look guys, this is like my 19th time I've told you. No, I'm playing.
He gets real cocky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you start rooting for him now. You're like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
So we do see some things during, like, right after the customs, right? He gets in a cab, he starts to go home, he's worried about his brother. His brother at this point has been brought up kind of briefly, like, here and there. Um, we do see him go get food for Roland, because that's happened a couple times. He's gotten some aspirin at this point, which she keeps calling Aston. How's it pronounced? I don't know how the Aston.
Aston was it? Aston?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Aston.
think so. And then that's something we haven't talked about, but it's not really a lot to discuss. But the way that Roland sees stuff, because
I
he
really like to see. I really like how he's finding out about these wonder drugs, Aspen, and
bro.
hot dog and tuna fish, tuna fish.
Tuna
Okay,
fish, and
so
then
Is
sugar.
it medicine or magic?
Yeah.
so I'm leading up to that, but like, so Eddie does stop and he gets some hot dogs and he gets a Pepsi, right? And he takes it back to Roland. Now, new readers or old reader, what y'all think about that? Like, Roland taking a drink of the Pepsi and literally like the tower. Like, he literally like had an orgasm and like an epiphany all in one moment because of how sweet the drink was. Like, he's like, oh my god, what is this shit? Like, that's a great question. Like, the comments that come from Roland right after him having his first ever like Pepsi drink, like, not only does he think it's some like association with the tower, like it's part of his quest all of a sudden, but then he starts contemplating their society, right? Because he's like, wait a minute, if they have a drink, this is so sweet, and Eddie's doing these drugs, like I mean, at this point, what was I mean, there was a lot of leading up into like Roland and like his conception of our world, but that was like, I mean, for me, it was kind of mind shattering because Roland was instantly able to decipher that like that it was just a common drink, that it was something like a variety kind of thing, but at the same time, the heroin had to be on another level kind of thing. Like, what did y'all think about it?
Yeah, I mean, he's wondering why is this legal and that's not,
That actually, like, it's funny he thought of that, right? Because it goes back to the true story of like how Coca-Cola literally had cocaine in it, right?
But I mean, he saw the whole freaking our universe as a bunch of addicts, right?
I think it's a little bit of why don't you just have the sugar and have the food? There's better things than having that monkey on your back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There's
that's what I
things
thought.
that are much sweeter in life. You don't need the monkey. This stuff is real. That stuff is artificial.
Yeah, it was like an instant blowback to that theory, and like, why is he on drugs? Like,
He doesn't. Wow, why is he bothering to do that crap? Like, look at this. This stuff's amazing. But
right.
it's so commonplace that we don't even see it in our world. But to him, it's amazing because it's something unnatural, and he hasn't come across that since he was a kid in Gilead.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought it was pretty cool. He was going to put some ketchup and mustard on, and he's like, I don't know if he doesn't like that. I don't know if that'll make him sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then whenever the all of it like turned to mush in his hands whenever it was going to Midworld, it was like just melting in his hands. That was pretty cool how he described that.
Oh yeah, it faded away. It just like it disappeared.
I could have a whole bunch of Roland going through all kind of different stuff. It's sort of like
some of the best parts.
Like when you watch this movie reaction. This is my first time watching Star Wars, and you're watching through his eyes. That first, and that to me, watching it through Roland's eyes. Drinking Pepsi for the first time, or
like him
for the first time, right?
Him eating a hot dog and him instantly, him not knowing what a hot dog was, but like after he tasted it, he instantly knew exactly what it was. It was like, he was like, I don't get why they eat this, but it was like, animal entrails encased. I mean, he
I want to see
he didn't like it, did he?
Roland go have some sushi first time ever. I want to see him go watch a football game first time ever.
No, he liked the Tudor fish better.
Yeah, he did. I thought that was a delicacy. All right, so
I mean, hot dogs are pretty gross if you think about it.
They are
Yeah, they are.
lips and assholes. That's what they're made out of.
except for Mad, shout out to the Haga King. So we have showdown and shootout. We meet Balazar and his men. Eddie becomes Houdini. Shootout ensues, and Eddie and Roland kill everybody. Henry dies. In this, like, I want to say brief, and it's not really brief. It is a big chunk of the story, but like after Eddie leaves the airport, he quickly tries to go home. He gets pretty much abducted. Finds out Henry is, with Balazar, these Italian mafia guys, and we pretty much have the shootout. Did we have the second moment where Roland kind of has the tower moment when he witnesses the
Leaning
neon
tower.
sign, right? Incidentally, right, that chapter was titled Tower. There was like 4 different uses of tower during that whole chapter. Not only the neon sign, the place was called Tower. Like we had Balazar inside his place building like card towers. Like, does anybody have a reason why there's so much tower reference in this one simple shootout with Balazar and Roland and Eddie? Trev.
Because it's is it a nexus point maybe to his journey? Like the events that happened inside there were crucial to his journey.
Tower related. I like it. Steve?
It's Ka.
Mm. Took the easy answer. Namman.
Remember, this is before the world has moved on, right?
Mhm.
The door we went through is not only a dimensional shift, but time shift too, right? So it's a beginning of a world is moving on. Is what I saw it, and
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I think it's partly that nothing like that right now. Well, the only thing right now that exists like that where Roland is from is the tower. I get the impression you don't have these giant skyscrapers or anything like that anymore. So he sees that, and that's the only thing he can relate it to. At the same time, the fact that you have other iterations inside, like you mentioned, the card tower. I'd have to say I'm going to have to look at the other chapters, but maybe things of importance are going to be happening in towers in each of these scenarios.
I always took it, if I had to look at like the analogy behind why towers were so much featured in that predominantly that chapter, was kind of like what Trev said. It was something that was like pivotal to their quest. If they had failed there, then it would have been the end of their quest, kind of thing. And in that situation, it's kind of cheap to say that it was like a shootout and they did prevail, but at the same time, like, it could have gone many different ways. But not only that, but like during that situation, we were still unsure if like Eddie was pivotal or needed, to continue on at that point, kind of thing. It was like one of the signs that Roland was there to do something important, having to deal with Eddie, kind of thing. Like we kind of knew from the beginning of stepping in with Eddie that that's what he was meant to do along his journey, was drop these drugs off his Balazar. So we kind of knew, like, right from the get-go, that it was kind of like that's where this part of the story was going to end. I mean, not to say that there's not more after that, but from when we met Eddie. So, like, like them pulling up to that location and it being Balazar's pizza place, and then the tower and the neon sign, and Roland like freaking out like he did. Like, honestly, it always reminded me of like the light bulb situation where like the light bulb literally went off and Roland said like, "Bing, I am supposed to be here," like, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you noticed how Eddie was the one that had to try and calm him down and said,
Mhm.
"Low, yo, just relax. Look
Well,
again," because he was looking through the FOMO eyes, right? And Eddie made him look again. It's not your tower. It's a leaning tower. It's just a fluorescent sign, man. Just chill.
Yeah,
and in that one sentence, it says that Roland comes forward instantly and reaches down for his guns that aren't there. Meaning he was literally going to start shooting everybody to get to the damn tower. Like there was like some mafia dude that was next to Eddie and like that had seen the switch, and he was like, "Did I just see his eyes change color? Nah, I'm not going to tell nobody." But like literally, like if the guns would have been there, you would have had to assume that like Roland just would have been like, "Kapow!" like instantly.
But did that scene in the Balazar's palace there seem like an audition to you with Eddie,
Hmm.
right?
Big time, right?
To see what he could do, right? This was his audition. This was his time to either shine. And then you saw how Roland was admiring a man who's naked can fight like that. That's hard thing to do.
One of
yeah,
my favorite scenes in all of action stuff is this scene because the way it goes down and Eddie's naked throughout it, and that comment is made, and it's such a realistic comment. It is extremely hard to do anything in in the nude in front of other people, like unless you're just extremely comfortable with that, and it's not even like showcased whether Eddie is or not. He just acts kind of thing. I mean, it's not like they King spends some time and gives you this backstory about how him and Henry used to run around naked. Nah, this dude just gets butt naked and goes down. He's like,
I don't know. He was pretty out of his wits until he saw his brother's head, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
that didn't. Even to this day, rereading that, it's something that catches me off guard, something that I did not see happening. I honestly like the way it played out. Like I kind of knew he was going to die at some level, but like the way he died, like he just overdosed, and then they like that dude chops his head off to fuck with Eddie. Like, bro, I didn't see that coming. Like, damn.
It was a brilliant move on their part, though.
Yeah, the only smart that was. Even the way, even the way he was going to attack Eddie after that, he was smart because he was already in that lower crouch position, knowing that Eddie was just going to go in berserk mode and run through the door and stuff. And if
He
it
just
wasn't
didn't
for
count on
Roland,
Roland. Yep.
yeah,
also I saw
yeah,
what's his name, Blizzard.
Balazar.
Yeah, I saw him as a first iteration of a Man in Black, kind of. So
It's interesting.
ironically, everything's gone except for the tower, right at the end. So
Wait, bring it back up, Steve.
There he is, Balazar.
Yeah,
Balazar.
Rico Balazar. He's the head. And I don't know. I mean, he's not like in the gang or nothing. He's just like running a drug operation / pizza place.
Yep, with a boss to answer to as well.
like
Okay,
I
I
said,
think it would go down the way it went down for sure. I mean, he was
So
about
what
to
were
go
you?
to the bathroom, and then he made him strip down. The dude gave him a prostate exam, and
Yeah.
then they were gonna also follow him into the bathroom. I didn't envision them pulling him into Midworld and killing him.
Oh, and that came like, and that's all. I mean, that the whole scene from once we enter the pizza place, I love it. It's gold. Like,
Oh yeah,
there's
big
not a
time.
part of the even like the whole like, Johnny Cash, and like that every time they ask him a question, he's like Johnny Cash, and the one time they do ask him a question that's related to Johnny Cash, he's like Barbara Streisand, like or some shit like. No,
Mhm.
but that whole scene with like how the mobsters are having so much fun with him, like, that they're not even taken back by his dumbass answers. I love that. Like the whole like Balazar in the other room building the cards and like awaiting this situation that he knows can't even happen. Like at this time, he's already determined that either Eddie's somehow working for the FBI. He's already determined that something's going down. Even before Eddie gets there. But just the layout of everything to me is so wonderful. Like from the second they go to that bathroom and he pulls Anduli like through the door, which is instantaneously like that. Didn't that Roland does discuss the plan with Eddie, and I want to say that that part is all like just Eddie being Eddie. Like he literally just grabbed that fool and fell through the door, and he was like, "Whippy!" Like, and the scary part was how close they were to the lobstrosities through that. Like, they had taken so much time. The lobstrosities had already like crept up to the already like moved away location that Roland had already moved away twice. Because as soon as they pull like Anduli through that thing, like that lobstropity, he's right there. And that guy's like, ah!
Well, thank goodness they were nearby, weren't they?
Yeah.
Otherwise, the other guy have a chance to survive. So
No, but in all of fiction, that's one of my favorite action scenes right there. The way that all plays out, like I don't think King could have written it any better or any different. Like I love the way it plays out. Like like he like even Balazar was like, man, I've seen some magicians, and I feel like this is that moment when they're asking people to check the hat, and Eddie's about to pull out like some weird magic trick, and like sure enough, he hella sure does. Like like they didn't even need to pull out the cocaine because after they killed that dude, it was just like, oh well, let's go in there and start killing people. Any thoughts before we move on that one? Not really any questions on that, but I mean, besides maybe like, hey, did you think it was going to play out like that? Or maybe the surprise of Henry's outcome.
I was so relieved because I already knew what the plan was going to be, right? Then the ball is I go, follow him. I mean, I'm like, why are you making this complicated? I know that. I know
liked
the
how
solution
he-
was right there, but you know, just how Stephen King complicate things by adding more obstacles in between.
Mhm.
Just that was a pretty good. That was a fun scene. That was a fun read.
I'm still wondering if his guns aren't magical in some way because Eddie, whenever he started going crazy, he felt like the gun was giving him courage. And just how he described whenever he blew people away with the gun, I envisioned like anime style, the guys flying back through the walls. And then he picked up one of the guy's guns and he just like unloaded it into somebody. It didn't have the same effect. So I don't know. I have a feeling that maybe his guns are magical. Just from the
Well, that is something to think about, and we are told that they are, from some magical descent, right? I mean, it's supposed to be like the Excalibur broken down into swords, right, and passed down or regenerate. Okay, so like there is some credence, right? Because during that scene, there are some big anime explosions that happen from those guns. But leading into what you're saying, every time that Eddie fires, the gun happens to work, right? But then we go back to what Namman was talking about and how like there were a couple times that Roland fired and they misfired, right? But every time for Eddie, they fired, right? Up until that part, like they worked for him all the way up until the part where Henry's, head rolled out, and he just lost all like comprehension, and the gun wasn't even really a gun no more,
Mm-hmm.
For constant readers, there is something that is brought up here that I want to wonder if anybody had any thoughts on it, but we do get a reference to a name to an older quartet member that is new, Desmond. Roland cries it out during the scene with Jamie, Cuthbert, Elaine, and Desmond. Any thought on Desmond? And this would only be for like the constant reader cut.
Yeah, I knew surprise quiz was going to come. I have no mental notes on Desmond.
Technically, it's a trick question. That this is the only time Desmond is referenced. It can be seen as like an oversight, but I will let you know that in like we find that out, and Roland does talk about that originally there was like 54 kids that were a part of his original like gunslinger group, and there was only like 15 of them that passed or something like that. Don't quote me on the numbers, but
Yeah,
something
the
like
class
that.
of '58.
Mhm. So Desmond's just another like member of a previous quartet that we don't know about, but it's not really ever referenced again. I don't know. It's just
Nope.
something. But did y'all spot that? Did you spot that, Steve, in your multiple reading?
No,
No.
I think I probably did, but I passed right over it because I read the comics and there was no reference. And like you said, they never talked about it again. I think it was an error. It might have
Well,
been. It might have
it didn't hit
should have
my
been
mental
something
note at
else.
all. So.
I want to say that that's what it is. It's just an error. Like he forgot to go forward with this character or the backstory, something like that. Um,
He rarely does that. He rarely does that. Stephen King rarely.
yeah, yeah, especially at this point with the revised, everything's pretty tight and stuff like that. So, and especially when I come across something that didn't have an answer, I was like, it's odd.
Yeah,
And
like
we're
was
going
it
to learn
supposed
more
to be
about all
their
those
last
people in the
name
fourth book.
or Destiny?
Wait, say it separately again. Steve, go ahead.
Oh, their last name. Maybe that was what it was supposed to be yelling out, like his
I
father's last name.
I looked up that too, and that like they all have like all good Johns. Like I did look up all because at first I thought Desmond
Balance,
was a
yeah.
reference, yeah, and I was like, nah, it wasn't. I was like, dang it, but it could still be somebody's last name. What were you saying, Trev?
I was just saying what the fourth book entails that group of people.
I'm gonna say yes, minus the one, minus Desmond. This is the only time
Right.
Desmond's rest. That's what I was saying. It's a constant reader thing, but this is the only time during the whole series that Desmond is actually. He didn't come up in the Gunslinger. He doesn't come up past him. It's just kind of like
Isn't that his father's middle name or anything?
that. I don't know. It could be. I'll have to look at that. That's a good thought. I don't know if it because it could be a real world reference. He might have been like, it might have been a shout out to like somebody in the real world that literally helped him, write it or something.
Yeah, he does.
Is it a
So
Beatles reference, maybe?
that too. After the shootout, we get to Shuffle. Eddie and Roland both battle wounded. They rest. They're both. At this point, Eddie recovers after finding some red lobster on the beach. Basically, at this time in the book, after the shootout, the Roland has asked Eddie to come through. And Eddie has come through. Eddie is forced to mend off of heroin because I mean, it's not that heroin doesn't exist in this world. We don't know that, but I mean, there's just not heroin around for him to get. At the same time, Roland is going like he does have antibiotics, but at the same time, he is going through like an infection that got real close to his heart. So they're both pretty like weak and wounded, mirroring each other's survival kind of stuff. Um, but basically, through all this, at the very end, we do see that Eddie Red Lobster on a beach. What? Yeah. And that it is referenced just like that. And Eddie praised that if he would give anything up to go to a Red Lobster. Um, but we do see that Eddie like is the one that kind of weans off first, and he's able to not only get. He calls it something funny, and I don't even know how it's pronounced. I don't know how the audio book worded it. It's like trios, but it's basically a stretcher. He is rolling on a stretcher. Like I don't even know what. I looked it up, and it's like a Stephen King word, as far as I could tell. Either that, or it's because they're also during. I don't know if that. This is why I asked if you spoke Italian. But during those mob moments, there are some like Italian, but it's like I want to say Stephen King took Spanish, Italian, and some other language and mixed it up because I was able to like translate some of the Italian, but I mean most of it didn't make sense.
Well,
Like
the
he used.
Italian and Spanish are pretty close, but I
Mhm.
don't remember this particular instance, to be honest with you.
That's some conversation during like Balzar and like one of his goons, and like it's like one paragraph of like supposed Italian, but I used multiple translators on the Italian, and like it came up with some stuff, but like I even went on Reddit and like, oh, nah, it's just he kind of like
Nonsense.
mixed. Yeah, he kind of like mixed some things, but let's just say I'll touch base on that in a second. But so, anyways, back on the beach. Eventually, we get to the door, and this is where we cut off. We get to the Lady of Shadows, the second door. There are some like things that happen on the beach, right? Because we find out how Eddie has been taking care of Roland. We don't know how he's been getting water. That's never discussed, but they do have a mass supply of water. But Eddie has been killing the lobstrosities, and they've been eating them, and we do know that they could be poisoned. It's kind of hinted that they are poisoned, but I mean, eventually we do see that they do get better. Does anybody have anything to add on
Water-wise,
Arms?
they go inland to get the water, and as they travel further and further, they have to travel inward to get the water.
That's what Roland assumes during the book. It's never like stated or whatever, but like Roland just assumes that there was a river that was nearby or something. And
No,
that's how.
they will get the water, and as they travel, the inland gets further. I mean, water source gets further away, and Roland has to carry. Remember, they take turns. Oops, maybe that's in Shadow.
Yeah, you've gone too far.
Sorry. Okay.
Because
Eddie
currently they're
pretty much,
still. They're
Eddie
still.
pretty much tells him, I mean, we eat poisonous stuff and we don't get poisoned. Doesn't he reference snakes?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, like a
And
rattlesnake.
it's something that like Roland kind of doubts for a little bit, right? Like whether Eddie is sufficient enough to take care of him. But then after like Roland comes to, like with some sense, like Eddie does bring up that fact. Like he was like, hey, we eat rattlesnake and they're poison, you know what I mean? So we do find out quickly, and Roland does too, that Eddie is very capable, like at first stating that Court might have hit this dude and later realizing, nah, like Court probably would have praised this guy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Is
he
this the
almost changes to a different person as he gets sober.
is this the
And that,
point in the book where, or in the story, I should say, when Eddie starts kind of calling out Roland a little bit?
He saves the Roland in the gunfight too.
yes, both to yes statements. This is the moment in the book where like Eddie is being very snippy with Roland, like he's and it's him coming off the drugs, like because after he's finally like weaned off the drugs, that's when him and Roland finally do start talking and stuff like that. They actually have like conversations, kind of thing.
But I think Eddie wanted to get off the drugs though because he had 4 pounds of freaking cocaine there. He could have just
Mhm.
easily got into that and started doing that, and he
Yep.
didn't.
True.
They never took that back with them. They never even actually told us what they did with them. They just
No.
left them there, I guess, and moved on. Right?
Not needed. Yep.
So
Wha-
he could have sustained himself.
Those lobster could have had it and had a grand old time.
I'm pretty sure they
Okay,
did
lobster.
because we did see they were eating that shoe at one point, and they were like, so I'm pretty sure they were just grabbing stuff off the beach. So look out for cocaine lobstericities coming to a theater near you.
It's like Cocaine Bear, right?
Right? I'd love it. That'd be scary as fuck, man. All right, so all right, so right, that a Chuck.
I thought it was. Let me say one more thing. I
Yeah.
thought it was really interesting that whenever Eddie was telling Roland his whole story, basically, that he wasn't telling Roland, but he was basically telling himself. He was coming clean, coming to terms with his life. I think.
During that whole time, it like Roland even like kind of states it without saying it, right? And it's a reflection of what we went through in the first book, right? With Mr. Farmer Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he had to alleviate himself of the guilt, and he just had needed somebody there to say it out loud too, kind of thing. And Roland, like, he doesn't even respond to him or nothing. He doesn't even like give him an answer. He's like, okay, he told the story, thanks, let's move on. Where's that red lobster you were talking about? No, but like, I mean, I can say, as far as meat in the story, this is where we get a lot of the meat, because first off, this is Eddie. Like, hi Eddie. Like, we're getting to see like a whole new character, because he got rid of the baboon. He left it behind, like Steve said. There's no mention of the cocaine, because it's not like a secret story element that King's hiding. Nah, they literally left it behind, like it wasn't even a thought in Eddie's mind. We do see for a brief moment when they get to the other door, though, how Eddie reacts, though, because that's what I was talking about. The reaction to the first door was Eddie goes to the door and he wants through it like immediately, and it's not really stated like drug wise. He wants food, and he's tired of eating these poison ass logs.
No, I didn't read it as. I mean, I guess it could have been poison, but I sort of read it as if they eat the same thing over and over again. There's
That too.
anything other nutrition.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that'll
it's
start to
ever.
show up.
I don't know if it's ever stated for a fact that it is poison. Like, as we go through the beginning of the book, you're supposed to assume that
I mean,
it
it's
is
hard to
poison.
imagine you have to eat McDonald's 100
Yeah,
days,
yeah. Oh, people get tired of eating the
3
same
meals a
thing.
day. Yeah,
Yeah.
just hamburgers.
Okay.
No
So
salad.
my question on the chapter, and this goes out to the constant too, because this is all right. So our title of the chapter is Shuffle, right? And we see, as they're going through this chapter, there is a shuffle. What's going on with the shuffle? Like, you got any thoughts on the shuffle? I mean, we're talking about a book about drawing, and we went through a tarot card reading, and we were told, like, these doors would come up and they would have these certain things on there. So what's with the shuffle?
Yeah, I never made the connection between shuffle and drawing and cards. I just figured shuffle was just kind of just this time in between worlds, or in between the next door.
I will tell you that every time it does say shuffle in the book, literally, or maybe it read it for the audio readers, that Roland passes out every time it does say shuffle, including when the title chapter came up. He was in a sleep state.
Yeah, I just thought it was in between each day.
A couple times it's like that, and there's a couple times he literally like passes out, and that's when the shuffle happens. Literally, sometimes it's like exhaustion, because during that time, that's when he's on the stretcher for most of the shuffle parts in the book. Any deeper thoughts on why it's so big? I mean, this is our halfway point in the book. Who's doing the shuffling?
I think it's Roland.
Point someone, Mike.
Hmm?
Point someone.
Trev, you said it. Do you think it was Roland?
Yeah, I think it's Roland. I think, like I said, after that, the end of that first book, I think he's in control of a lot more than Stephen King's letting on to be.
Okay. Steve.
Jesus, these are so deep. I'm still trying to figure out where you're coming at from with that one. I'm thinking, what am I thinking? I don't know what I'm thinking. It's getting late now.
Yeah.
My brain's starting to turn to mush. I think that whole time between doors, the distance between the doors was set for a reason. They need to, this is a bonding time for Roland and for Eddie, but it's also a time for Eddie to get clean off of his addiction and, start turning into the gunslinger apprentice that he's going to be. And for Roland, it's just getting better. So he's just having his little delusion dreams and talking, and Eddie's listening to him and learning about their world. That's kind of what I see with the shuffle there, from that to the Lady of Shadows door.
I like it. Namman?
Yeah, I kind of see like Roland going through experience. If you really think about shuffle for as a car, you shuffle once, then you shuffle again. So some cards you will see again as you're going through, right? So he's past experience, alternate experiences. It's just that's where I saw it, and it's a how the next door is going to be and how the event will turn out will be depend on the shuffle.
Interesting.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't put a whole lot of thought into shuffle itself. I just thought again it was the time between doors. The way that you just put it, as far as it's a time where they bonded, where you see a little bit more about Eddie getting clean and whatnot. Maybe it's shuffle as in, a kind of a aimless walk to the next door.
For me, I always looked at it, and it's still hard for me not to look at it that way. But the tarot card was such a big thing. It was the ending of the first book, like like this whole like explanation on why he was following this guy. And then we go into this book, and it's like he comes to a door, and the drawing motif is pretty big. And then we get to this part in the book, and it's like the shuffle. And like I always go back to like why do you shuffle a deck, or what are things that you do shuffle? Because you don't necessarily just shuffle cards, right? I mean, we have a dance called a shuffle. We have like a certain type of walk that's called a shuffle. Like there's many things that could apply to. So like I always kind of took it like Namman had pointed out, like it was a shuffling of experiences. Like during that time, like you said, it's this bonding experience that they do have, that they should have, because now Eddie's there. And I always like kind of felt like it was him trying to like, not necessarily him doing it, because I always kind of led it to like maybe like a god motif, let's say, at this moment, because we don't really have a definition of the other yet. But maybe something like that was like shuffling certain things or aspects about Roland's life. And at this time, from the first book to this one, it is a big change, right? I mean, everything that we just read is nothing like the first book, except for Roland. That's about, and he's already been drastically changed from the time when we start this book. I mean, not just mentally, but physically, right? So I will say there is a deeper meaning that will like maybe become clearer, once we get to the end. But I want to say it's also supposed to be apparent in this book too, right? Because we're talking about him drawing, and I mean it's one of the things you do during cards. You draw a card, right?
Pick a card, any card.
You draw cards. You build a tower with it. You shuffle the cards. I mean,
Yeah.
Uno. Pick up 10.
That is basically where we left off, because at the end of this story we come to our next door, which is where we were, where we stopped this part at, which is the Lady of Shadows. Basically in this read, that's all we got to do was have Eddie and Roland come up to the door and look at the door, and then that's it. And and that's where y'all were supposed to stop.
all right. So
well, crucial.
I mean, you almost had perfect timing, the 2-hour mark.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Crucial. Before that happened, though, Eddie does pull the gun out of his holster. The first person to ever do that.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
kind of lets him do it.
Yeah,
I'm glad you highlighted that because there was two moments, right? Because there was one moment where like Roland had given him the gun. It was the first time where like, and Eddie actually had grabbed the gun, and it was like so smooth it almost slipped the fuck out of his hands. He was like, "What the fuck?"
so heavy.
Yeah, but like that was a first for Roland, where he literally gave someone one of his guns. Like he trusted somebody that much. But not only that, but he allowed someone to go into his holster. And for me, that's one of those moments are like my favorite Roland moments, because instantly he was like, "Oh, I could have just like broke his hand in like 4 different places before he even knew what he was doing," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you picked up on that. Now that there was that trust, like, because in the first book we saw something a lot like that, right? As soon as Jake saw Roland, I mean, he fell in love with Jake, and it wasn't. I mean, you're talking about the first book. We got this grizzled, hardcore, child murderer. No, I mean, and he's loving this kid the second he sees him, right? But then with Eddie, it's like the admiration. You could say love. You could say like the trust is almost there from the get go in a weird way where it shouldn't be. Like who honestly like gets into bed with a like known druggie and is like, hey, just grab my
Hey,
gun, player.
he's been in the guy's mind. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
That's who.
yeah. So.
And we do have that moment as well when Roland. I mean, Eddie does knock out Roland. Like he does take the gun and he does whiplash Roland and knocks him out. That is one of the shuffle
Oh,
moments.
is that a spoiler?
No. That's in our reading.
Okay.
He's out
Yeah,
for what, 10 minutes or something?
Yeah. Oh no, like 2 minutes I think. Stated
minutes.
that after he's knocked out, he's like he wakes back up and they're still at the door. He's like, "You tower junkie." Anything? That's pretty much where we are. Anybody else have anything else they want to add into this part's reading?
Nothing I can think of. Yeah.
We covered it in
Steve.
nauseating detail.
I think we did a good job. Jim.
Damn
Yeah.
right. This was really well done.
Yeah.
Good job, man.
Shout out to Aaron. Thanks for being here with the time you gave us. Thanks for everybody who showed up and stayed for the whole thing. We know who you are. No, I'm playing. And Las Cruces already reached out to me during the stream, so I got you, Las Cruces. But I really want to thank everybody who not only watches this but comes back, does the rewatch. Please like, comment, all that good stuff. Anybody want to say anything before I say bye?
2 weeks,
No.
huh?
Yep, in 2 weeks we'll be back
Lady
for
of the
part
Shadow,
2.
next chapter.
That's right, Lady of the Shadows, where we're starting,
Next door. I mean, next door. Yeah.
and we're going all the way to the end. It'll be the end of the book. The next chapter literally is called Detta and Odetta. If that's not so much, but that is where we're starting off.
That's when I knew. That's when I knew that the movie was not going to be about.
Oh man, if they don't have that in there, get out of here.
Because
All right.
because Odetta, because Elvis, what's his name? The black guy that played the Roland.
Idris Elba.
Oh, Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. When they casted him, I knew there wasn't going to be a drawing of the three.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, everybody, we're out of here.